Right, everyone. I think we are live and on the air. This is, I'm losing track of which webinar this is exactly because we've done quite a bit, and really happy that these have grown in popularity and seen a good amount of demand from our viewers. And we are happy to keep putting them on, so keep looking out for more webinars here in the future. Today we have a special guest, as always, but we're not going to get there just yet because we have a little bit of housekeeping to do first. And we'll get started with that. So as people trickle in here, we'll go ahead and just get started with some housekeeping items. And first, I want to recognize who is putting on this webinar. Team Builder, my name is Hewitt Tomlin. I'm with Team Builder. And we are happy to put on the Strength and Conditioning webinars in conjunction with Strength Performance Network, who is our partner. Everyone here is definitely familiar with Strength Performance Network. They are the first online social network that are dedicated to strength coaches, and they have a variety of content on their site that changes daily, including videos and photos, job openings, workout tips, and connecting with other professionals around the world at every level. Now, that's Strength Performance Network. Now, Strength Performance Daily is their new website. This is kind of the daily kind of premier content of Strength Performance. So in addition to visiting the SPN website, check out Strength Performance Daily, which is strengthperformancedaily.com, and you'll kind of get the best of the best there in terms of some really nice productions as far as video goes. And also you can catch educational content there, which includes the webinars that we put on here. So if you see this webinar and you would like to share it with a colleague, by all means, visit Strength Performance Daily, and we can post the recordings there for you to share. Now, Team Builder is the affordable online strength software. We've been helping coaches program workouts faster, managing athletes, and saving time for over 6 years now. We're proud to work with over 600 organizations, and that's across high school, collegiate strength coaches, professional franchises, and of course, private strength coaches and facilities. If anyone is interested in Team Builder, of course, you can reach out to me directly after the webinar and see our content on SPN as well. Now, to what you came here for, we are pleased to welcome Coach Matt Nein. He is the coordinator of sports performance at Salisbury University. Salisbury University is a Division III school here in Maryland, which is also where Team Builder happens to be based as well. But we didn't plan that. Coach is also an NSCA Coach of the Year finalist in 2016 and 17. So if you're a betting man, I take a little money and put it on the fact that he might win in 2018, but we'll see. And then lastly, before we go here, we want to make sure that everyone knows that this webinar is CSCS approved. We will send you an email with a link to a quiz that's going to go immediately after this webinar. And you have to take the quiz. You can take it as many times as you'd like. Once you pass, you will be approved for CSCS credits. Again, we will send you that link, so no problem. Additionally, we are recording this webinar, so if you want to review it, if you want to share it, we will have it out on the SPN YouTube channel immediately after, so no worries in that regard. And then also, we want everyone to know that these webinars are supposed to be very interactive. If you have questions or concerns, just tweet us at Team Builder, at SP Network. We love it when people tweet their questions or tweet out things that you like, some quotes or tips or pointers. Make it vibrant out there. Let people know that you're a part of the webinar and what you're learning stuff. We love it when things go on social media and let people know what's going on. It just creates an awesome environment. So right now, we're going to go ahead and get started with what we were intended to do the whole time, which is to have Matt present to us. Now, I'm going to switch over to Matt. Matt is live from Salisbury University. Matt, thank you for joining us, and go ahead and kick it off.
All righty. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Hewitt. I definitely appreciate this opportunity again to the Strength Performance Network. Thanks for allowing me to come in here and talk about commitment and buy-in. So I'm going to pull up my slides here and kind of work through it as we go. Again, at the end, if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer your questions as we go. And again, just tweet them across. All right. Let's see here. All right. So today, I mean, I think this is one of the key components that I think is often lost In strength and conditioning, we typically are always, X's and O's. We're a lot of statistics, data from that end of things. And we actually don't really look into how committed our athletes are, how bought in are they to the program, right? So that's kind of what our goal is today is what ways can we look at assessing that, having that data, being able to see the data, and then what can we do to then further their development and get them more bought in and more committed. Okay. Starting off here, I think this is a pretty cool story. It's one that I saw a few years back, and I really, really enjoy it. And since then, we deliver this to some of our teams and really talk about the value of 1%, right? And we give it in the story of the power of the penny, right? So, we'll give it here, and you can, I can't see you guys, unfortunately, so I don't really know how many people are raising their hand, but we'll go with it, okay? So, if you see a penny on the street, right, walking around, do you pick it up, right? And when I've done this before, what we end up seeing is that most people do not, right? They don't pick up the penny, right? Some people pick it up if it's heads only, right? They want the good luck or something along that line, right? So they'll pick up the penny that is heads up. But other than that, they tend not to pick it up, right? Now, if there was a dollar bill on the ground, right, and we say, okay, if you would pick that up, raise your hand, and the whole room, everybody in attendance here would pick that dollar bill up. Okay. We say, how many pennies are in a dollar, right? There's 100, right? That's our non-trick question, right? It's pretty standard there. All right. So there's 100 pennies in a dollar, right? And we can also guarantee that we probably see or walk over a lot more pennies or small change than we actually do dollar bills, than we actually see dollar bills just laying out on the ground. Okay. So the question ends up being is, well, why do we walk over the pennies? Right? Knowing that if we just collected 100 of them, we would have our dollar, right? And what ends up happening is, right, the return that we get from that penny is so minimal, right, that we've got to wait to collect 99 more before we actually get our dollar, right? And what ends up happening is we're not willing, right, to take the time, right, or allow time to add up in order to collect each one of these individual pennies for me to reach a dollar, right? How this works in athletics and in life is this penny is resemblant of basically the little things, right? The small things in life, right, that when added up or compounded on together, right, create greatness, right? Create success. Okay. So it might be the value, going and playing the game, lifting, running, nutrition, recovery, right? Those end up being our 5 pillars, right, that we focus on here at Salisbury. Excuse me. But the small things associated with that can really add up, right, to be putting yourself into the most successful position possible as an athlete, right? So by you walking over it, what it ends up indicating is that you're not willing, right, to do the little things in life to become the most successful you can become, right? And from this point on, I don't think you'll walk over a penny ever again, right? It's surprising when you see small change and things like that out on the ground, right? It is now a symbol. It is a symbol that, hey, I am not willing to walk over the little things, want to be a great coach, right? And if you give it to your athletes, to be a great athlete, right? When you give them this message of the power of the penny, right? So in the end, what this dictates is we're going to start to focus on the little things in life that can make our athletes become successful. And it really begins a lot with our relationship development, our culture creation. And we as coaches have a major impact. We get to see the athletes a large amount of time in the off season and in season, right? We get to see them a tremendous amount. So we have a large impact that we can have on those athletes. And I think the power of the penny is where it all begins, right? Where it all starts is we need to value the little things, right? The process that's going to help us get to where we need to go. Right, we'll define it a little bit more in terms of the process and so forth. We'll talk about our 5 pillars that we focus on here in terms of becoming the best athlete as we go. Okay. Again, we'd love to show hands, but again, nobody's going to see anybody. But think to yourself, would you say your athletes are committed? And most people say, yeah, I do. I think my athletes, I think they're pretty committed. Right? And what I'm going to say to you, well, what are they committed to? Do you know? right? Do they know? I think that's a more important question, right? You may think they know, but they have no idea, right? Coaches said, show up to lift at 6 a.m. and I'm there, okay? And then the question is, if they do say they are, how do you know that they're committed, right? What are you assessing and analyzing, right? And to give you that feedback, right? In the weight room, right, we're getting our feedback, right? Is our program getting better? We start to see our numbers improve and increase and so forth, right? It's tangible. It's right there in our face. This concept is not. Now, in the 5 pillars, we'll review them again here, being in the weight room, conditioning, right? We have a lot of control over those, right? Nutrition, depending upon where you are, what your resources are, and what you have available to you, we here at Salisbury, we don't have a nutrition budget. We don't have those opportunities really, where some other schools may. So that's out of our control for the most part. Looking at our recovery, how do they sleep? What do they do? Right. Again, that's pretty much out of our work. And then playing the game. Again, we can't be around them. We can't have an implement in there to be an NCAA violation. Right. So 3 out of the 5 pillars, we really have very little control over, right, when it comes to their ultimate success, right? We can hopefully impact them in the weight room and conditioning, but if they don't want to be there, they don't want to put the effort in, they're not going to get better at those either. Right? And I think that's where culture creation, relationship development are paramount. They're the things that we need to really specialize in and be great at creating in our programs to get people to be inspired in the weight room, to be passionate about getting better in all facets, right? That make them, whether it's in the classroom, fitness, so forth. Here at Salisbury, 99.999% of our athletes will never play the game competitively when they're done, right? They're not going on to play in the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, right? But what they are going to do is they're going to go into life hopefully having skills necessary to be successful. Being able to take some of these commitment concepts that we'll talk about here and carry them on into their life where they go, into as parents, possibly as coaches, and as, in their profession, what they're studying here at school. Okay.
Hey, Matt,
yeah.
Let me go ahead and jump in. I believe that you're in presentation mode. However, it's not showing for the webinar.
Okay.
So maybe let's exit presentation mode, and then we'll just use PowerPoint, and then you can click slide by slide if that's okay with you.
Yeah. How are we right now?
Yeah. So now we're looking at the correct slide. Otherwise, we were, previously on the first slide only. So let's go ahead and use the screen, and then we'll do it that way. How about that?
Sounds great. We'll get it done.
Okay. Oh, not that's all we do.
Yeah. All right. So I think this was a great quote. This was from the book, What Drives Winning by Brett Ledbetter. A great book. I think this is the very beginning process, understanding kind of where you are as a coach and what your role as a coach is. Okay. And again, we have to have a multi-dimensional approach to grow the person first and the player second. Right. If we want to have a lasting, meaningful impact on the people we work with. Again, you can go back to Simon Sinek's starts with why. Right? Why do you do what you do? Right? I think you need to have that developed, right, in some capacity as a coach. Right? What's your overall why? Right? Ours here for me is to inspire, right, to create passion for individuals to be excited about their development and their lifelong pursuit of fitness. Right? That's my why every single day. Why we get up. Right? It has to do with impacting that as a person. Right? First, player will come second. Right? That creates my relationship. Right? And then from the get-go, now we have that trust and so forth to really get what we want out of the weight room, off the field conditioning, so forth, you name it. Okay. Oop, I'm a little fast there. Okay. All right. Defining commitment. What we see traditionally here, so just some buzzwords of what commitment really is, right? A promise, an investment. It's selfless, an action, some sort of dedication, loyalty, right? So those are some of the, if you go in and you look at Webster's, some of the key buzzwords, I think that come out of that. What I've done is I've taken it a little bit further, and I think it gives it a better overall definition here of what commitment really is. Right? And how I'm seeing it is something that transforms our vision into reality, right? Words that speak boldly of your intentions, but the actions that speak louder than those words. Right? That's a true commitment, right? It's making time when there isn't any, right? The work being done when nobody's looking, right? The little choices made daily to become great. That goes back into that power of the penny, right? The little choices that I'm going to make, right? And that's what it ends up being, right? We just had a book club where we got to read, where we were reading Urban Meyer's book, Above the Line, right? Great book if you have the opportunity to look at it. Again, what are your above the line behaviors, right? What are the choices, right? Every day there's an event, right? How do you respond? And those are the little choices that we have to make daily, right? I'm going to get up every day, right? How do I respond, right? That's going to affect my overall outcome, right? E plus R equals O. That's one of the big components that we've been pushing here with our athletes. What is that daily response going to be, right? So I think this is a great definition here that kind of governs everything that we're going to do. Okay. We'll move on there. All right. 4-step process. So this is the overall process to enhance commitment. Okay. First one here: realization, alignment, awareness, and development. Okay. So we'll talk about each of these individually as we go throughout the remainder of the webinar here. Okay. Now this one's pretty easy. It's the only slide related to realization. And I believe it's the first step that you need to take in understanding what you do and why you do what you do, right? It's not what you teach, it's what you emphasize, right? It's realizing that you could go and teach it, right? But if you never come back to it, you never emphasize it, the impact is not going to be there, right? That's step one, understanding, right? You must continue to emphasize. If you think it's important in your program, right, you have to emphasize it. Right? If commitment is important, right, we have to figure out ways to emphasize it. If we want to develop commitment, that's number one, right? It's not what you teach, right? It's what you emphasize as a coach, right? Right, that's it. That's step one, right? Realization, right? Step two here is alignment. We need to put everything in alignment first, and this is important that it comes before everything else, right? Before we start getting to our assessment and development pieces. Right? Everything needs to be in alignment, right? First off, attitude and mindset, right? How are you going to go about your day, right? If we haven't had attitude talks or mindset talks, watching YouTube videos related to these, there's a ton of information out there. It's not good. This isn't going to have a major impact on your athlete, right? If their attitude is bad, I got to go to lift today, right? I got to go spend time, right? We're talking about investment here, right? We want to invest time. We want to get something out of this, something in return, okay? So we need to have those talks. We need to sit down, before at the beginning of our training cycle with our team and really dive into attitude and mindset. What does it look like? Actually go through it, show them, right? There's no better way, right? We have all different types of learning styles, and you can talk about it, but people sometimes need to see what a positive or great attitude looks like. When does it start, right? Does it start at the beginning, right? There's a Navy commander who talks about setting your alarm, right? And how many people are hitting snooze, right? That's a mindset concept, right? It's hitting snooze, or you say you're not willing or not ready to start your day, right? To get off here to a bang and just get after it, right? That's an attitude and mindset thing, right? Put your feet on the floor, get up, and let's attack the day, right? Brian Cain talks about that a lot in sports psychology, right? Attack your day. That's the mindset and attitude we have to have in just about anything that we do if we want to be successful, okay? Step two, vision, mission, values. We'll break these down, standards, why we do what we do as an athlete, and then actually how we create habit formation, okay? The biggest thing here is the attitude, mindset, vision, mission, values, standards, and why. We need to know what we're committing to. Right? The athlete needs to know exactly what they're going to commit to before we can actually start assessing and so forth. Okay. All right. Very simple, just kind of defining your vision and mission. Right. Vision ends up being something that's a long-term plan. Right. And this is a sample here of one of our teams at Salisbury. Now, they come up with it. Right. If we allow them to invest their time into creating this, they're going to have a lot more buy-in right from the get-go, right? So simple things, we just look buzzwords, right? I actually wrote it, put their buzzwords together to formulate a great quality vision and a great quality mission, right? But all the underlying words there, this is what it means virtually to be a Salisbury University. In this case, this was field hockey, right? To be a Salisbury University field hockey player, I think, yeah. And, so they're taking, this is what it means, right? And so men's lacrosse then takes a look at it, right? And they start seeing kind of what's going on, and they really like it. They made a few modifications to it and kind of made it their own, right? And some of our other teams, same thing, right? It really defines everything, and it's got to be for a greater purpose, right? It's not to win championships. Yes, that's everybody's goal, right? Those are outcome based, right? We need to see process style goals that can be attainable and so forth. So that's where our vision is driven around, right? To become a true champion, right? Someone who embraces the process, passionately commits to becoming the best teammate and team daily, right? At the end of the day, right, we can look at it, is that occurring on a daily basis, weekly basis, right? If not, right, why, right? We can look at and start to figure out why, and we'll see that in some of our assessment pieces, right? It holds our athletes accountable, okay? Your mission becomes your daily objective to reach your vision, okay? So how are you going to go about each day, right? This goes into some of their attitude and mindset work that we talked about already, right? So we want enthusiasm when they come to the weight room, right? I don't care if you're standing outside, right? You're going to be enthusiastic that you're sitting outside, right? You get to come today, right? And train, right? Not a lot of people get to do that, right? Our percentages in terms of athletes who move from high school to college is very, very minimal, okay? You get that opportunity, right? What an awesome, might as well be excited and jazzed up about it, right? So positive mindset in what we're doing, so our thoughts are directed in the right way, right? And together, as we start putting these together, we're going to start to see effort start to come out, right? And we're going to compound it together. If I'm going to do it as an athlete and each of my other teammates, when we add that together, there should be an energy in the room that is just off the chart, right? And if we're creating that, every single day, what's going to happen in the room, right? In the weight room, what's going to happen if we're conditioning, right? Just think about the energy, right? The level, the work, the effort that's being put into training, right? If we can get that to there, what about everything else then, right? What about the nutrition that they're going to take at home, right? What about the recovery, right? Going to bed, getting your 8 to 10 hours of sleep, right? To help reduce our injury, right? What about playing the game, right? Those all fall in line here, right? And if we're not doing it, now I have the ability to hold them accountable to something, right? So are you embracing the process, right? The process isn't just in the weight room, right? You could be committed to the weight room, but not committed to everything else, okay? So are you embracing the full process, right? So we can actually, begin to start our assessment pieces and so forth. And now they all hold merit and they hold truth here for the athlete. All right. Once we have our vision, mission, now it's our core values, right? And this is men's lacrosse core values here. And we'll show you on the next slide here what that looks like. What we end up saying is, tell me what it means to be a Salisbury University lacrosse player, right? In 5 words or less. And you can see all the words there on the left. There's a ton of them. Ended up being 308 different words that were given, right? Looking at from 65 people. So we ended up seeing a total of 87 different words going through this concept here, right? So looking at it, I don't even know if we know, right? Do we truly know what it means, right? Now these become our core values, right? Something that drives what we do. You can look at the top there: commitment, dedication, edge, hard work, right? Those are all 15s, 26, 33, right? There's a large amount of, they have a good idea right there in terms of what it means to be a Salisbury University men's lacrosse player, 11-time national champions, right? They get it, right? So what we did is then we evaluated, right? We find our synonyms, right? And then we find a meaningful acronym. And this ends up becoming our core values in which they created, right? We just found the work to get them there, right? So if you look at it coming out of all those words, we also talk with our coaching staff in terms of, what do they talk about on a daily basis, right? And if you saw edge, it was very high up there, and grit was something that was very high up there on that list as well. And we talk with our coaching staff, and edge and grit become two words that they utilize on a regular basis. Now, what we ended up doing is we took it and changed it a little bit. So now edge and grit, right, don't just mean getting the edge, right, or grit where it has no defined meaning necessarily. We are now putting it into a little bit more detail, right? So if we're a family, right, so we're creating this unity concept with our group. So we're going to be a family that will get the edge because of our grit, right? So because of our guaranteed relentless intensity and toughness, and if you have the opportunity to go watch Salisbury University men's lacrosse play, lacrosse, you go just play pickup basketball, tug of war. It's insane, the intensity and toughness that they bring, and it is constant, right? And that's what they bring, right? And that's grit, right? That's what we're defining as grit, is this relentless intensity and toughness, right? So because of that, right, we're going to have growth and excellence, and it's going to be driven by the effort that we put in, right? So EDGE now means effort driven, right? Growth and excellence, right? So we're not just going to hope it happens, right? We're going to put the effort in, and that's going to drive our growth and excellence. That's now what EDGE means, right? So when we talk about getting our edge, right, you got to put the effort in, right? That effort will drive growth and excellence. It's got to be detailed and focused effort, right? But now we know what edge and grit specifically mean, okay? Right? And you can take, like, looking at effort, what is effort, right? Somebody's going to put the work, driven, right? A focus to be the best, right? Growth, showing continual progress. Excellence, somebody who commands the best, right, of themselves and their teammates. So we can add accountability into that as well, right? So we'll go through this with our team. Again, these are the synonyms that, we basically put, and everything that they came up with, right, put them together. They're the ones who formulate it, right? That means that it's theirs, right? They can take pride in creating this, okay? Right? All right, so going through our standards now. So once we have our mission, our vision, our mission, our values, now it's creating standards. Again, all of this is designed here so that we know what we're able to hold each other accountable to. Right. So again, we use our 5 pillars, and these are just some samples, right, that we pulled out. Your standards are now associated with your core values, right? And these are going to be what we end up measuring, right? So we can take it and actually see what we're doing to hold us back into that vision. So if we're not attending every lift session, right? And again, here at Division III level, out of season work is voluntary, right? Is not mandatory during that out of season period. So they don't have to come if they don't want to. Right. So attending all lift sessions is something that they set as their standard. We don't set these standards. It's their standards, right, as an athlete. Right. And it has to go back to relating to, in this case here, right, sacrifice, being committed. Right. So this is now some of the core values. And you'll see the men's lacrosse core values coming back in. Right? This is Salisbury University field hockey. Their acronym is SUFH. Right. So sacrifice, united, focused, and hungry. Right, is what they came up with as their core values. Attend all lift sessions. I mean, that might have been an issue for some of them, getting to every single lift session. And if that's the case, right, if we want to be great, right, we want to be committed, we need to attack that first. And I think one of the ones that is easy to see here, and you'll see some data later, is the nutrition. We were struggling. Our teams, some of our teams were coming out in terms of eating breakfast and lunch daily, right? Now they would lift at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and some of them would only eat breakfast. Right. And to give you an idea, our percentages were in the 60s to 70s in the early weeks of training. That only 60 to 70% of the group was eating both breakfast and lunch before they came to a training session. Well, that's going to impact, right, that overall effort work that's going to be put in, and even some of the outcomes coming out of that training session. So we need to make that needs to become their standard, right? We couldn't talk about what to eat necessarily if you're not eating. Right. So we've got to figure that aspect out first, is making sure that we're eating both breakfast and lunch every single day. Right. So this year now, coming back into it becomes standard. That is now standard. Right. Last week's percentage score was 98% of our group is eating both breakfast and lunch every single day. Right. Great. That is now that is no longer a standard. That's the norm now. Right. Now we have the opportunity in this next year, right? Because now what ends up happening is, that's what it means to be a Salisbury University field hockey player or a lacrosse player, is this now becomes the norm, right? You get in there, you feed, you feed yourself, right? You have adequate nutrition so that when you get to the training session, you're able to put everything that you've got into getting better in that pillar, right? In the weight room, okay? And again, they're all based out of our core values. Now we have the ability to hold somebody accountable to something and so forth. Now, I'm not a big fan of, having some sort of fitness-based punishment, right? My big thing, just talk to the athlete, right? Most of the time, that's all they really need, right? I think you create a better relationship because you're really showing that you care, right? Even if somebody's late, right? I don't really understand the purpose of putting somebody, the rest of the team through, burpees, doing 50 burpees or whatever it may be, because that just impacts the overall training session, right? That also impacts their recovery over the next 2, 3, 4 days, weeks, months, and so forth, right? What would have happened if we just talked to the athlete? Right? What happened? Well, I overslept, right? That happens, right? We've all been there, and sometimes some part of our life, right? It happens, right? Again, why can't we now set an action plan? Okay, if it happens, what are you going to do, right? So it doesn't happen again, right? We create our action plan, and they set that, so now they're taking some investment into it. And if it does happen again, what are you gonna? What's your punishment going to be, right? Let you create it. Right? If you feel that, 10 burpees, if that's something that you want to do, great. Right? If you want to, break out your best dance moves, and we had that today in here in one of our training sessions, and the team was okay with that, right? It was humbling, right? That was something that the team said agreed upon, great, right? But it doesn't have to be, right, a constant negative, right? We're trying to get somebody to be passionate, somebody to be excited, right? That's all about the experience that's created while they're with us. Right? And I want my experiences to be fantastic, right? And eventually, right, if they care and are passionate, they won't be late, right? They won't show up. You won't have problems, right, when that happens, okay? All right, so we got that. Vision, mission, values, and standards. Okay, coming into our why now.
Hey, and Matt, I'm sorry, let me jump in here. We've got a question from the audience.
Cool.
When we talk about standards and these points that you just mentioned here, is this an agreement between you and the team, or is the sports coach involved in this? Where does the sports coach fall in this process here?
Well, see, for us, our coaches, we can't really interact with them in this context. With the athletes are creating it, we're not allowed to technically, report back stuff, things like that. So for us, this was created for the athletes by the athletes, right? This is what they determine is for them to be the most successful, right? This is what they determine out of these 5 pillars they need to do in order to be successful, right? And they may change, right? They may change as we go, saying, hey, you know what? Eating breakfast and lunch daily, that's the norm now, right? Let's change it. Let's get better at it. And we can change those, right? We can make them better. If it's too easy, right? Again, if it's too easy or too hard, it's not going to be ideal, right? Too hard, we start to see anxiety, things along that line. If it's too easy, we don't see a lot of effort put in, right? So they need to be able to find that balance. Again, basically what we end up doing in the training sessions, we still going to train and work. During rest breaks, we just have markers at the whiteboard, right? What do you think's a standard, right? What should be a standard in the weight room, right? Write them down. Anything you want to write down, write it down. And then we'll come back as a group afterwards and spend 5 minutes. All right, in the weight room, here's what we have. We have these 13 different things, right? And well, what do you think? Is this something, or can we combine these together? I don't think, as the team agrees, we don't believe this to be standard, or, we believe this to be the norm of what it should already be like. So they set them, so you could sit down with your coaching staff and easily talk about that with them. We just don't do it because, we want to make sure that we're within the NCAA, rules here and so forth. So because it's occurring in the weight room, we don't want to carry it back out of the weight room and communicate with our coaching staff. Coaching staff understands our 5 pillars, right? What our main focus is on. And, the athletes know, what they need to do to be great. Everybody knows, right? The problem that you have is that people aren't willing to do it, right? And so now if you're not willing to, eat with a teammate once a week, right? How does that help our family become a family? How does that help us become united as a team? How does that help with trust and development, right? I mean, those are some of the key components here. And I'll give you a story here in a little bit about one where we start to look at the role nutrition and sleep played in the development of one of our athletes who was scored very low by her teammates. So hope that helps. Okay. All right. So looking at our whys now here, great book, Power Habit by Charles Duhigg. What we're trying to do here is formulate our why. And what we've ended up finding here is that most of our athletes' why is related to 2 components. One, a social event of some sort, right? Where they get to be around their buddies, their boys, right? Their friends, and so that they have that process in terms of their why. And then on the other side, we have those who are it's invoking some sort of emotion, right? Some sort of feeling where I feel stronger or more confident, whatever it may be. And then in between that, you've got everybody else, right? They're a combination in some capacity of the two, right? So, I think it's important to understand why they do what they do, knowing that, and I think it's important that they know as well, okay? Again, here in terms of what Charles Duhigg talks about here is habits are formed through cue, process, reward, right? Your cue is always going to be there, right? Not going to be the training time. So for, let's say men's lacrosse, their cue was going to be a 3 o'clock lift every day, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday was their lifting times. Right? In order to get their reward, right, they were going to go through the process, right, of lifting and so forth. But where I can alter things, right, I can alter things at the process spot, right? If I want to get intended outcomes, things along that line, I want people to become more committed. It's got to come through that process, right? And that's that live action when they're there, right? If they're not there, it's never going to happen, right? Because commitment spreads through word of mouth, right? That's the only way it's going to spread. And we'll talk about that here in terms of diffusion of innovation in a second here, right? Ends up being that we focus on tiny gains, right? We want to see as many tiny gains as we can get, as often as we can get. So whatever that may be, if you're running a challenge and so forth, push-up challenge, or we might just hop on the Tendo unit and jump as explosive as we can, so you can set the most amount of watts, right? Vert, whatever it may be, but just to show tiny gains as it relates to the process, right? And it relates to the deep process here of the work that we're putting in to become the best we can become, right? We want to create quality habits, right? Bad habits, right? What's going to happen? They're going to go home over the summer. And, for us, all of our athletes are going to go home. We don't see many here, maybe 25 to 30 total. And if they have bad habits, right, we're going to struggle. So that affects, again, for us, creating cues, altering cues, setting alarms, things along that line when they're going to train over the summer, so that we still have the same cue. Now, if you're a reward person who is driven solely by, having that social interaction, and you don't have that when you're at home, you're probably going to have bad habits. You're probably not going to do a lot of training, right? So can we alter that? Can we figure out some different ways to create that? Can we create a different reward in some capacity, right? Can the reward shift, okay, is what we're going to look at here as we go, and that ends up being one of the main components as we go. Okay, so we've already talked about this. Really our habits as they relate to the 5 key areas, right? Lifting, running, recovery, nutrition, and playing the game, our 5 pillars. Right? That's what we want to create our habits around, our quality habits around those 5 components. Right? And it really begins with understanding why they do what they do, why do they come in, what's their greater purpose for continuing to play the game that they play. Okay. All right. So that was step 2 of the whole commitment development concept. Right. Step 3 here now, awareness. Right. There's 3 components to this. It's an assessment, analysis, and acceptance piece. Okay. So our very first one here is an assessment. Right. And what we end up doing is we do 2 different types of assessments, and it just gives us the idea to be able to see what the team thinks, as well then as what the individual may think of themselves. And then we can look and see some people are pretty harsh on themselves when the team is not. Right, so this is our team assessment. Right, this comes from Jeff Jansen's Sports Leadership Center and Commitment Continuum book, which is some of this material that we're talking about has come from. Some of it we've adapted and modified a little bit. He's done an amazing job with his work and so forth and his research. And so a good shout out there to him. If you get his books, his culture creation stuff, it's phenomenal. Right, but looking at this team assessment, what we end up doing is, if we take this slide up here, if you look at the graph there on the right, basically what you end up having is everybody's name, last name, first name, everybody listed, right? And then you have those categories going across. And what you end up doing is you're just going to basically check off where they fall, okay? Where each member on your team falls. And I think this is one of the big pieces is the awareness. They need to understand, because most of the time the coaches tell them, but they don't want to believe it, right? Those people who are compliant, existent, right, reluctant, right? They do the bare minimum. Sometimes they're negative impacts, right? They're distractions, whatever it may be on that bottom end. They don't want to believe that that's them, right? Mom and dad, they've been telling them that they're the greatest for their whole entire life, you know, and so forth. They just think that they're always committed or compelled, right? So each person, they score themselves, and then they score every other teammate on their team. And so what we end up having then is some results here that actually can see what everybody thinks of you, right? And then we find, you know, where the most scores were and so forth. And then that becomes, right, where you fall, right? People see you as an existent athlete, right? Someone who does the bare minimum. Or others, we start to see them as compelled, right? So somebody who makes other people around them better. What ends up happening here is what we've seen in some of the comparisons that we've taken is, if you go back to the why, those people who were social interactions tend to be the people who are on the lower half in the reds there and yellows, right? The existent to reluctant, resistant, compared to those who are more the feeling, right? That emotion, they become the compelleds and committeds. And those who have the mix tend to be anywhere between the existent and compliant, right there in the middle. And it's really interesting. It was really interesting to see that and how that all played into effect once all the information and data was coming back into play after their assessment and why they did what they do, which is neat. And so again, what we're trying to do, we want to see as many people as we can in the committed and compelled category, right? That's our ultimate goal. Because if you look at and what that means to be committed, right? Those are people that we want, right, on our team, right? Those are the people that I want to surround myself with, right, as an athlete. So that's our goal.
Hey,
we're
Matt,
trying to get that to spread. Yeah.
Hey, quick thing, or two things actually. Do you mind maybe going to that previous slide and then kind of formatting PowerPoint so that it zooms up a little bit more on that table? Just I think people want to see a little bit more on that table there. So that's how you would just simply assess your team. And then the second thing is, you know, to the average person that is kind of hearing this part of the presentation, they may think, well, wouldn't everyone just fall in a bell curve? Just like any stable population, wouldn't you have a few people who are really compelled and a few people who are really persistent or resistant rather, and a lot of people in the middle? Do you accept that philosophy, or
yeah?
Or how do you respond to that?
Yes, that's exactly it. And then we'll go through that here in a second. I mean, that's what you're going to see. And we'll talk about it in terms of the concept of diffusion and innovation and in the business sense and how that can relate back to our athletes. And again, the commitment concept is something that we're trying to get to spread, because you're going to have people on your team that are resistant and reluctant, right? What do we do with those people? How do we get them to change, right? Or not necessarily change, but how do we get them to see where they're at? And that's what ends up happening is they are now aware of where they sit, right, in the group. And ultimately what ends up happening is you're going to have two choices, right? Either you change, right? You make the adjustments because of the vision, the mission, and the values and standards, right? And you make that adjustment to start working towards be committed, or maybe this game ends for you, right? Maybe this isn't for you right now, and that's okay, right? At the end of the day, we can still be friends as athletes, right? We can still, you know, be buddies, but if you're not willing to do what's necessary and what the team believes to become successful, I don't know if this is for you, right? But if you are, you've got to recognize that. You've got to be aware of where you're at and really start to begin to make that necessary adjustment, right? And begin the change process and development process from there. So did that answer your question? A little bit.
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah.
Okay. And then hopefully everybody can see this. And again, if anybody wants any of these, just shoot me an email afterwards. My email will come up at the end. Shoot me an email. I'll be more than happy to just send you the Excel files. That way you don't have to reinvent the wheel and go from there. Okay. So this was one scale, right? So this ended up being our team assessment scale. And our other assessment here, we got this from Catalyst Athletics. And I think it was great. I think it's a great article. And what it ends up doing is saying, hey, why aren't we continue to make the gains that we made before? And what it ended up looking at was your level of commitment. What are you committed to, right? Are we committed to our 5 pillars, right? So we can go back in the scale up above here and see what does a 10 look like, right? What does an 8 look like, a 9? And we're going to do that here as for coaches here in just a second, so you can see what your level of commitment to being the best coach you can become. And you'll see the breakdown in that. But you can do the same thing for your athlete if those are your 5 pillars, whatever it may be, right? So we say a compelled athlete's a 10, a resistant athlete's a 1, right? And then I guess in between, existing compliant would somewhere be about a 5, right, in their scoring. So what you end up doing here out of this component is you rate yourself, right, on each one of these, right? So weightlifting, where am I, right? Am I a 10? Do I fall into what a compelled athlete gives? Right? Or am I a resistant athlete, rather than 1? Right? I give that score. So what I end up doing then is I take all 5, I add them up. And the easiest thing to do is then just double the score, and that becomes your individual commitment score. Right? Now it's in your face. Right? Our one of our group scores right now is coming at 64%. Right? When we take all their individual assessments, right, and then we add them all up and divide by the total number of athletes, their team average is coming at 64%. Right now. And this is something new to them. They haven't done this before for this group. So, we're really beginning that process, and they've got a lot of rookies and new group in. So this is fresh for them. They've never done this before. So again, if you're only going to be giving me D+ effort, right, where are we going to go, right? What are your outcomes that you want? You say you want to be successful. How bad, right? Now we're there, right? Put yourself there, right? You're 64%. Is that going to get you what you want? Probably not, right? How can we get that to grow, right? We'll look at what Jeff Jansen talks about here in a little bit in terms of his statistics to see our best seasons and so forth, okay? So we go through those 2 assessments, just 2 different ways to analyze it and so forth. So we'll do it for you guys, right? So you can take this score, at where you're sitting, when you're watching the webinar here. We're going to score these 5, right? To me, these are 5 key components to becoming a successful coach, right? Can you develop relationships? Can you develop athletes? How do you develop personally? How do you develop professionally? And the role that you play with your family, okay? So the very first one here, relationship development, right? It's the investment in creating a positive connection or bond, right, with your athletes and your coaches, right? You have your scores there, 1 through 10, right? So look at them, see where you're at. What do you do, right? Are you somebody who goes above and beyond? You've got a plan to create relationships on a daily basis, right? Or do you just go above and beyond? If that's the case, you're then a 9, right? You try to create it daily with everybody, great, you're an 8, right? But you don't try to go above and beyond, right? You focus on creating it. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. That's a 7, right? And so forth. So you can set these, you can divide however you think. For me, this is what I believe in terms of somebody who's going to be a great relationship developer, someone who goes above and beyond and has a plan to create that. I guarantee you they've got great relationship skills with their athletes. Okay, so score yourself on that one. Okay, and our next one here is athlete development. Right. Again, this is the nuts and bolts of things, right? This is the X's and O's: reducing risk of injury, enhancing performance, and psychological development, right? Do you double check, triple check, right? Create the most optimal training programs, right? Do you individualize? Do you specify for the team? Do you specify for the sport? Or do you go all the way back to a 1, you just wing it, right? All right, going in the weight room. Today we're just going to do, today we got squats, right? We don't know why we're doing it. We're just doing it, right? Or you went on Google and said, hey, I need a workout for basketball, and go from there. You're probably going to be a 3, right? There's not a lot of focus to create the most optimal programs possible. Okay, so score yourself on that one. Right, going down into personal development. Right, this is yourself, not as a coach. Right, how do you manage stress, life outside, work, family, time, so forth? How do you create that separation? Okay, some people don't have it. Right, they're just go, and in 5 years they're burnt out. Okay. Do you have a plan, right? That's a 10. Somebody who has a plan, right? They're organized, detailed, right? That would be somebody that I would say would be compelled. Okay, score yourself here. Okay. And next one here, professional development, right? So this is you as a coach. How do you become a better coach? Right? I think that's important, right? That you're looking daily, right? So optimally invested, multiple avenues daily, and it's mapped out. Right? Do you plan your day, right? Brian Kane talks about a 168, right? 168 hours in a week, right? How are you planning your day, right? To be optimally invested, right, in multiple avenues, right, to develop yourself professionally. It could just be reading one article, right, today, and reading a book at night, right? Or a YouTube video, whatever it may be, right? There's plenty of avenues out there, okay? And again, you can see somebody all the way down to the bottom who doesn't really do much professional development. They think they know it all. That might be some of, we've had it where the young intern really, man, they just learned a concept in class the other day, and man, they know it all right now, right? So figuring out where they fall into that category, right? And our last one here is family. Now I leave this one up to you guys to decide what a 1 through a 10 would look like, right? It depends, because some of us, we might just be married. Some of us might be married with kids. Some of us might be single, right? And dealing with family. It could be mom and dad, cousins, whatever it may be, right? So I'll leave that up to you guys to decide. All right, take your 1 through 10s. Now what you're going to do here is take these numbers, add them up, right? You can divide by 50, right? Move your decimal place 2 places, or you can just double your number, okay? And that ends up becoming your commitment score, right, to becoming the most successful coach you can become, okay? So again, this is some of our data. Now the table that's over here, this was an old table. We've said it's since modified. Like we say, we have the reluctant category, reluctant and resistant out there. They've changed from disturbance to distractions, okay? And compliant has been added in. But this is some of the data here. You can see the team that was being scored in this case, right? In their analysis, they scored a 71% when it came to their individual score. When we added up the team, right, each individual and got the average there. When they came out as a group and they were scoring themselves and everybody else, right, that goes back to that other slide that we blew up, that Hewitt had us blow up there. You can see when you take those numbers, you divide them all out, 75% of our group is coming through the committed or compelled category, right? The green highlights is kind of where they're at, is where they're currently seeing the most scores. The light is where they're trending in a positive. The red is where they're trending in a negative, okay, in a negative direction. So we have that idea. We can start to see now, again, this is the awareness piece. Where are we, right? What are we all about? Okay. So we have that. It's right there in your face. I think that's the key to it here. As you can see, is a C- average good enough, right? Is that good enough to become great, right? All right, so some of the data here. This is Jeff Jansen's work here in terms of the data, and we'll try to blow it up here a little bit bigger so hopefully you guys can see it. Okay, ultimately what we want to see out of this here, right, is a score of 80%. Right now, he talks about using the compliant, committed, and compelled, right? And I'm not as big of a fan as using the compliant category. So we try to accelerate that and say, hey, committed and compelled is what we're looking for. But you can look, right, when Hewitt talked about that bell curve, right, where we're seeing, 25% of our group right down here in the worst seasons that we've had in terms of outcomes, right, 10 to 15%, 25% of our group is falling in this category, right, compared to a 10 up here, right, in our best season. So our goal is, can we get that shift to occur where most of our athletes are falling above the compliant category, right? That's our goal, right, with this whole entire concept that we're working on here. And again, this comes into the concept here of diffusion of innovation, okay? Our goal here is to get commitment to spread. It spreads through word of mouth, okay, through communication. Okay? We're not necessarily looking for change. We just want spread to occur. So what happens here in diffusion of innovation, right? You have these different categories. So you have your innovators, right? Those are the gung-hos. These become the ones who run through the wall, right? They run into the wall, get knocked down, they get back up. You say run again, and they get back and try to do it again, right? Those are those gung-hos, the ones that we, in the weight room, you just love, right? Get after it, right? Your early adopters, those are some of your hard workers. Again, this makes up 16%, right? That's the tipping point, right? Do you have 16% of your group, right, when assessed back here, right, is 16% of our group, right, falling in these two categories, committed and compelled? Right? If they are, you've got a great opportunity for this to spread, right? If not, right, we need to really dive in and really work on and creating culture and so forth, okay, further that growth of culture, right? You then have your early majorities, right? These are individuals who show signs of what the early adopters and innovators, right? They work hard, but then at times they show signs of what may come out here at the laggers. Our laggers, the people who don't want to be there, right? They're negative, right? They hate coming. They don't know why they're there. They end up being, for us, what we see out of the data is that those are our social people, right? They don't want to be there that day, right? Or really any day, some days, right? And then our late majority, right? They show signs, some small signs here of hard work and effort and putting that in, but they also tend to trend towards more being a lagger and someone who is, negative or so forth, right? So I'll show you here on the next slide. Coming out of that data that was a few slides back, this is where the percentages we're at. So 25% of our group fell into the top two categories of where we wanted to see them. And when we do our why assessment, and having that why where 25% is there, looking at those who are compelled, great, man. We're in a spot here where this can spread, right? At 25%, it's going to spread. Now it's my job to create that, right? That's the next piece here is development, right? Make sure, they've accepted it, right? They make the adjustment right here in the acceptance piece, right? You have two directions, like we already said, right? They've accepted it. That was the third step there in step 3. Now it's development, right? We start to make adjustments, we track, we reevaluate, and we constantly reaffirm. Okay, so our commitment adjustment here, right? What is it? What's causing you, right, to struggle, right? What's causing to other people for you to think of you as a reluctant athlete? And what it ends up being is there's simple things, right? How much effort do you put in, right? Are you you're not very vocal, right? Some of our rookies that we're seeing right now is they're falling into that existent to compliant category because they don't talk, right? They're just trying to feel out where they're at, and they don't want to go too crazy. They don't want to be on the backside, but they end up being very quiet. Okay, and so I'll give you an example here. One of our individuals, she was falling into the reluctant category. Her teammates, that's where they thought she was, right? And part of her issue was that as we look in here, some of the effort that was being put in, her attitude was something else that was key. And again, we can sit here and talk about that and with them and show them exactly, hey, where we think, where the coaches may think, and even somewhere the players may think why that individual is falling into that category. Right. So what we needed to do is we got to get her and start to move that and start to change that and shift that. Right. So one of our other athletes was having a hard time eating lunch every day. She would go to eat breakfast, and it was funny. She'd go and eat with this individual who was scoring as reluctant. Right. She was actually falling into a committed category. The individual who was not eating lunch every day. And so what ended up happening is, we assess nutrition. And again, that's what we measure. Do you eat breakfast and lunch every day? And she was saying no, and it's consistent over the first 3 weeks. We'll say, well, at that point, we say, well, who do you eat breakfast with? And you're obviously eating breakfast every day. Who do you eat breakfast with? Well, I eat with so-and-so. And I know that she was a reluctant individual. I say, okay, great. So I leave her and go talk to the individual who was reluctant. I say, okay, so you eat with this person every day. I'm now going to give you a responsibility. Your responsibility is every time that she leaves the cafeteria from breakfast, she has something that she can take with her for lunch. That's your job right now, right? So now she has some responsibility, right? It's her, it's falling on her now. So the effort she puts in, right? Her attitude towards it, right? Because now she was tied into it, right? And that from that point on, right, the individual who was committed never missed breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or breakfast and lunch ever again. And it was awesome because all of a sudden we not only did we praise the individual who was committed for eating breakfast and lunch, but we also praised that athlete who was reluctant, right? So now she's excited, right? We've created emotion in her, right? We've created some excitement, some passion, right? This year she's coming in scoring as a compelled, a compliant athlete who is trending to be committed, right? She's seen it, right? She either had her choice was to stop, to quit, right? Because this maybe isn't for her in terms of the vision, or she makes the shift and begins to make that shift and buys into creating that shift, right? She just needed to understand where she was at, right? And she needed to understand ways to create that. And we give her ways, right? We help create her ways, give her some leadership opportunities, even though she may not have deserved them, right? She was given them, right? And all of a sudden she now moves on. One of the first person in my office to see when their off-season training was going to begin was her. Right? Kind of surprising, kind of shocking in that aspect, that I didn't think she would be the first one in, but all of a sudden she's starting to realize and start to see the benefits, right? In game play, right? How she's interacting with her teammates, right? That's what it's all about, right? That's sports performance right there, right? Because ultimately it's going to transfer out onto the field to better game play. Okay. So that's the adjustment piece. Can we make them? Can we constantly, again, reaffirm that and so forth? Okay, just another tracking device. So this is our weekly trackers that we use here. So again, we're tracking things like sleep, right? How many hours of sleep? Again, that goes back into the standards that we set that we need to measure, right? Our unity, do we wear the same clothing, right? You know, and so forth. So, you know, are they actually, you know, doing that? Going into breakfast and lunch, you can see that out there on the right over here. Are we assessing breakfast and lunch? And then we assess body contacts, right? Creating another unity concept with that. High fives, right? Anytime somebody body contacts one another, right? Are we tracking that? And again, it's pretty interesting to see where it starts off at, you know, 10, 15 times maybe. And all of a sudden they start getting into it. The energy in the room just takes off. Right? It's great. They're high-fiving, they're congratulating, people are working hard. Like, that's what we want, right? That's what we're creating in there, right? So we assess it, right? And so it's not intrusive, I think, into their daily work. I end up being the one who goes through that after their main lifts. We go through it, gives me the opportunity to talk to them. It gets personal with them. Why aren't they, you know, why do we only get 3 hours? Well, I was studying for a test, so I can make a note down. And when we come back on Wednesday, I can see how they did on their tests. And I say, wow, how did you remember? Well, I wrote it down, right? But they don't need to know that, right? But I'm investing in them and they like that. So they're creating that and they're buying in a lot more, right? And ultimately they're buying into the 5 pillars that we think are most important to become the best you can become, okay? And again, these are some of our standards that we're assessing here, right? They also have a weekly commitment tracker, right? So in this case, would be an athlete who'd be lifting Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right? They're assessing themselves now. So this is a self-assessment, where they fall, right? So they get their scale, they can see that. Their standards are out on the left, so they know what they're holding themselves accountable to. In order to be a committed athlete in any of the categories, you have to meet standard, right? And then from there, you can set mini commitment goals for the next week, right? So we do this on Monday prior to training. They go in, they fill this out. They set their goals for the week, mini goals for the week. It might be, hey, you know what? Last week's sleep, I was averaging 6 hours. This week, right, my sleep average 8 hours, right? We set measurable goals, right? But again, they do this in my case, we do it every Monday prior to our training session, okay? Again, it's all related back to our standards, right? We've got to measure them, right? This is what we emphasize, right? That's what we talked about from the get-go, right? Step 1, it's what you emphasize. Emphasize the things that are most important, right? To create, again, in these 5 pillars right now for this group, these were the most important things that they needed to emphasize. Now, they had a few more attached in here, but, you know, for purposes, we didn't include them all. But that's what we want to emphasize. That's what we want to be great at, and because that is going to enable us to become the most successful we can become, right? It's not about winning national championships and things along that. Like, did we get better as an individual, right? Did we embrace the process? Did I get better? Did my teammates get better? Right? Outcomes will happen when those things begin to occur. Okay. Again, just another tracking device, right? Something else, maybe a little bit different. This is a point system. I can't blow it up any bigger than this. Again, I can send it to you. This one automatically tracks points. So we did a point system with it, right? Just a different way to go about doing it. And then we can revolve points over the course of the whole entire semester, so forth. Just some different ways to track, kind of keep it exciting. For them, you know, how many points did you get this week? Whatever it may be, right? Just create that. Some are different. You know, some people react to things differently than others. Okay, right. And then going back finally here in the last step here, it's supposed to be step 4, not step 3. There is affirmation, right? Is continuing to affirm this, right? Going back and forth, right? We look at it every single week, right? We assess, right? Weekly, we develop weekly, right? We get involved with them in that aspect. Right now, if you come in and watch our training sessions, they're getting after it, right? I mean, this isn't taking away. It's not very time consuming. I think that's some of the issues that people are thinking right now, right? It isn't. It doesn't take that much time. I have it done in about 5 minutes. I've attacked just about 5 to 10 minutes. I've hit every single athlete, right? With that, it's very minimal, right? Yeah. Do I go home and do some of the work at home? Yeah. Have we done it on Team Builder too? Yes, we've done it on Team Builder. The only one setback there is I really like getting in and talking with the athletes a little bit. So we've taken it away from that aspect, but it works just as well in there, and your data's done for you, right? So you don't have to go and compute all the data when you get home. But again, every day it's something that we're bringing up and talking about with our athlete. Okay. Last slide here, you can see some of the progressions, right, where we're diving in. So we see our sleep scores, right? They're pretty good. You can see where midterms fell, right? It gives us the opportunity to start talking about that. A good example here, one of the individuals is because we were emphasizing sleep for the first 6 weeks of training. When it came to midterm time, he said, well, Matt, I've got 3 exams this week, right? And I don't think next week, I don't think my sleep scores next week are going to be that good, right? But what we've done now is she's already started thinking about this. That's step 1, right? She's starting to realize what issues she needs to address. So now she can start to address them. So I can talk about skills necessary to address them. What can you do? Do you need to find naps during the day? Right? If you only get 6 at night, what can you do? Can you find a half an hour nap here and a half an hour nap there at times? And because we now could talk about these skills, she was able to attain, right, her normal sleep scores. Right? Perfect. Right? But if we don't emphasize it, she doesn't care about it. Right? You can see their gear score as we went, which is great. That becomes the norm now. Body contacts, right? They started at 26, right? We were progressing upwards there at 45, and then we had a little funk there and challenging, but we ended there in the 40s, which is still, if you look at it from 26 to 41, right? That's great. That's where our average contacts were in a given week. We look at our breakfast and lunch went from 62% to 100% over the last 3 weeks. Awesome, right? We're eating well, right? This is now starting to become the habit, right? That's what we want. And like I said, right now, our data from this same group is showing 100% right from the get-go, from week 1 on that. So we were just tracking just to see kind of what our progression would be off of standards from the previous year and have they become the norm now. Our weekly commitment tracker went from 60% to 85%, right? That means we're now 85% committed, right? We are falling to Jeff Jansen's research work related to our, 80% for our best seasons, right? What else could we ask for? At the end of the day, right, you may not win the national championship, right? We may not get to those, right? But we're putting ourselves in the best possible position to be the most successful possible, right? What else could you ask for as a coach, right? You've done the work. You've worked hard. They've put the effort in to the 5 pillars that are key, right, to becoming the best athlete you can become, right? One other things that we take into that, we infuse the mental aspect into all 5 of those. Okay, so it's you could pull that out and say, hey, the psychological development piece might be important. And if that's one of your pillars, great, right? No one says these have to be your 5 pillars. We just are the 5 pillars that we use here at Salisbury. Okay. And that's it. All that I have here. Again, you can shoot me an email if you want these slides. I'll be more than happy to send it to you. Any of the trackers, so forth. That way you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I'll send them to you as well. You can any other questions that you may have, we'll feel free right now. We'll shoot them out there and we'll go. So hopefully everyone's got my email and so forth written down here, and we'll pull out of here and get out into the screen. So hopefully you guys can see me now. We're back.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much. That was awesome. I was watching this presentation, and for those that don't know, I'm a former Division III athlete. And Matt's a Division III coach, and both of our programs win a lot of ball games. I mean, they're successful programs, but the fact of the matter is that motivation at that level is a decision. No athletes are necessarily forced to be committed. You can't be forced to be committed. So all of this was just kind of bringing back to me a lot of my experience back in my college days as well. And I think it also stands to mention that commitment is not some sort of status you and then you're there forever. It's an ongoing thing. Matt, I imagine that you get to 85% commitment and you don't just turn the trackers off and let the team be, right? You're doing it over and over, week by week, right?
Yeah. Your goal is to stay there then at that point, right? Continue to grow. Can we get better? Right? That's every single day, and everything that we do is, can we get better? And if we're not getting better, we're getting worse. Right? So
I love it. It's that's so cool. So folks, the quiz will be emailed out. Thank you for staying through. We went a little bit over, but this is an important topic, and I'm glad we did and got through the end. The quiz will be mailed out via email, and go ahead and take it as many times as you can to get your credits. The recording will be done as soon as the broadcast is over, and we'll put that out on social media. Go ahead and carry on the discussion on social media. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the webinar. Thank you, everyone, for sitting in. As far as the presentation mode, the software didn't pick up the presentation mode, so we had to call an audible. That's just life. But thank you for those in the audience that gave some tips as far as seeing the presentation better. And, of course, Matt will share his presentation. His email we will share. It's ma9@salisbury.edu. Again, we are going to share that out. So let's hop on social media and continue the conversation. Again, the recording and the quiz will come up after. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. We will announce our next webinar soon. Matt, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you around the circuit.
Thanks, Hugh. I appreciate it. Thanks for allowing me to come here and talk today.
Absolutely. Everyone, have a good day.